Hello and welcome to Not Your Mother's Midlife Crisis. I'm Chris, and this is my co-host, Chris.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
Good. I'm still kind of recovering from our fun weekend.
It was a fun weekend. The weather's been good.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very fulfilling.
Yes. It was a good
Yes,
time with friends. Got to catch up.
yes.
Yes.
I'm also very excited about today.
Oh, I know. So am I. I've been talking this up. I mean, to people on the beach, people in the gym. I've been telling
Yes, you
everybody
have.
about today's episode. So it's
So,
exciting because today we are welcoming back Susan Federico. She is the founder and owner of Balanced Health, where she and her team treat hormonal disorders, medical weight loss, gut health optimization, thyroid optimization, and more, all completely customized to your individual needs and goals. They have a root cause approach to prioritize wellness and longevity.
sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it?
Yes, she is
Well,
amazing.
I can absolutely attest because I go to Balance Health and Susan is my number one provider. So I'm very lucky to have her. I'll tell you, when she does your blood work, you go through the blood work, it's such an in-depth explanation and she helps you understand it. And together we figured out a plan and a path that was best to optimize my health. And I can tell you, I see a big improvement in my health over the past 3 years that I've been seeing Susan. So welcome back, Susan.
Thank
And
you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Has it been
yeah,
3 years already? Wow, time flies.
Yes. Yeah, it really does. It's been pretty awesome. So
Yeah,
we're going to just jump right into it, Susan. Can you define andropause to us and who it affects?
sure. I'm really glad, first of all, that you asked me to talk about this subject because so much of our practice, like when I initially opened this practice, it was really to help women. And I didn't even know that so many men needed help as well. So just kind of by default, I was just out there helping women and treating women, and they were feeling so much better that, they were like, can I bring you my husband? Can I bring you my boyfriend? And so, like, I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. So I'm like, never even thought I'd be helping men, but it has really turned into something that's been so amazing because men are very, very undertreated out there. And I think that this whole misconception about what is andropause, what do men struggle with, it's not talked about as much. And I don't know if it's a thing just men aren't coming forward with how they're feeling. But what I hear mostly from men is that, I have XYZ symptoms and it's just a normal part of the aging process. I'm just aging, I'm just getting older, my aches and pains, my, whatever. It's just part of aging. And they tend to kind of brush it off as that, where, women are really now thinking about, is this menopause? Is this perimenopause? Men aren't thinking, is this andropause? They're thinking, what's wrong with me? Right. And so it's a much different kind of conversation that I have with our men's health patients. So one of the things that is different, andropause can sort of be, likened to menopause for women. So male menopause, I guess, is something, that we could kind of think about it. But there's a pretty big difference. With women, our hormones decline much more abruptly than men. So as we're kind of plugging through perimenopause and we get to menopause, that's a pretty sharp decline over about a 10 to 15-year period of time. For men, and the primary hormone for men is testosterone, although there are others, which we can talk about. Testosterone declines much more slowly, so that it declines only about 1% starting around age 30. So, by the time men are getting into their late 40s and 50s, that's when they're starting to see the result of this decline that started way back, in their 30s. So it's so much more subtle that they don't recognize it as much as women recognize symptoms of perimenopause and menopause.
That's interesting. I never knew that it was a gradual, slowly.
and I'm wondering too if, we're all talking about it.
Right.
Look, we were all together talking
Yeah.
about it with friends, you talk about it with family members, and if men are just like,
Right. Are
I'm not
men too
going
man?
there.
Are they too manly to say with their friends and talk about these
Yep.
symptoms?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something's wrong.
Yeah, and it's usually their wife or their girlfriend or their significant other that is recognizing those changes, and encouraging them to, to go get treatment, more than it is the men that are recognizing it.
Oh, that's really
That
interesting.
is very
Mhm.
interesting. So we got to get the men out there talking about it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
You can get it started.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so what are the differences then? You mentioned some about the decline in hormones, like the way that is different, but what are some of the other differences between male and female aging?
I think that most of it comes down to that difference between how slowly testosterone declines compared to how quickly, just relatively, women's hormones decline. So, for women, we're experiencing the decline of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So there's a lot more imbalance that can happen because there are three hormones that are kind of, running amok for us. Where men, it's primarily just the testosterone. But I think that it's the biggest difference is that awareness piece, right? Is women, because it's everywhere now, right? No one doesn't know the word perimenopause anymore. And I don't know if that was the case just like 5 years ago, right? But
Agreed.
now, just with like, it's become just such a big thing, where women are advocating for themselves. They're doing their own research. It's kind of this like awakening where, we're just not happy with that response. It's normal, it's fine. Your mother went through it, you'll go through it. We're not happy with those things anymore. I don't think men have reached that point yet. Like, the awareness isn't there. They're not talking about it, like we mentioned, and they don't really have a good outlet where they don't know where to go. Right. That's the other thing. So a lot of times they'll end up just in their primary care office, and they get overlooked quite a bit because the symptoms that they're coming in with isn't typically something primary care doctors are thinking testosterone first, right? They're thinking some other kind of disease process. So they're getting very underdiagnosed and undertreated, right? So, and I think that just becomes this whole cycle with, if they talk to their friends about anything, that's what they're talking about. Right, I went to my primary care doctor, he told me it was anxiety, and he started me on some Lexapro, right? And that's the most common, kind of scenario that we see.
It's very interesting that it's that way because all the research money has gone to men, but they're the ones complaining in the least.
Yeah.
So how did that
Yep.
happen?
Yeah,
Definitely.
a lot of the research money went towards looking at issues with sexual health, right? So I think it was very much driven towards low libido, but mostly erectile dysfunction, right? And I always say this, like, if something affects a man's erection, the world stops, right? Like, that's just very much
Right.
something that, the world stops. Everybody needs to stop and fix this problem. No one's looking about women's libido at all, right?
Because you
So there's
can't
a big
see it. Yeah.
mismatch because you can't
Yes.
see it, right?
Because and I
Right.
think that's the big thing. Like there, you can
Yeah.
clearly see a physical change on a man, but you don't see it on a woman.
And I could tell
Yeah.
you, I remember talking to my gynecologist, this was years ago, and talking about libido, and she's like, "Really, it's a mental thing. It's just all in your head." And I was like, "Uh, really?"
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
No.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But this was my MD. Yes.
That's the scary
Mhm. She
thing.
was the
Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah.
It's part of aging. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
well,
Exactly.
well, that's
It's
just
normal.
something to investigate. It's something to investigate further, I think. But all right. So, Susan, what are some signs and symptoms for men as their hormones decrease?
Yeah, so this is actually good, I think, for everyone to know, men and women, because there are a lot of symptoms that we wouldn't necessarily correlate with low testosterone. So, most of the time, I think, even just for men, but everybody thinks that when testosterone's low, the first thing they think of, it's their libido or their sex drive or it's their erectile dysfunction. That is kind of what is perceived as low testosterone. And so if you have other symptoms that are outside of that, then that's when they're the things that are not getting recognized. But some of the ones that we see a lot in our office would be loss of motivation, not necessarily energy, but sometimes loss of energy. But motivation is a big thing where the things that they used to love to do, they don't like to do anymore. Or all of a sudden, they're on the couch every night. They have no desire to do anything, go anywhere. They don't want to work out anymore. That motivation piece, like motivation is a very important thing for men just in general. So that's a big one, that loss of motivation. Yes, low libido, brain fog and anxiety are also very, very high on that list. And I think this is what concerns me the most is because there are so many men getting treated for anxiety with anti-anxiety medication where it's really low testosterone. They need their testosterone optimized to improve their mental health, not an anti-anxiety medication. So that's a big one. I think of all of this that I want, men and women to know is if you're a man and you're struggling with anxiety or you're a woman and you're noticing that in your partner, like getting a testosterone evaluation is probably one of the first things that you should think about as opposed to, going right for it. And there is a place for those kind of medications. I'm not saying there's not. But it could be a testosterone thing and not necessarily an anxiety thing. Some of the other things would be not able to build muscle despite working out. So that is they've kind of hit this brick wall. They can't build muscle anymore. And then they start to get this like midsection weight gain. So kind of like increase in belly fat. It's a very classic picture of a man with low testosterone. He has these skinny arms and legs and this like pot belly. Right. So now you're going to see it when you go to the beach. So you're welcome. Now you're going to see it everywhere.
I'm going to
Right?
hand your card out.
Yeah.
I'm just going to walk on the
Right.
beach. I'm going to have your card. I'm like, I think
Here
you
you
need
go.
her.
But it's very
I'll
interesting,
see it.
though,
Yeah.
the similar things in terms of like, as they called it, like menopause
Yeah.
belly,
Yes.
I guess the
I was,
andropause belly,
yeah.
Yeah. They get an
the,
andropause belly.
you hit that
Yep.
plateau no matter what your diet or exercise
Yep.
routine would be. Like, I know
Yeah.
without those hormones for women, you can't lose the weight or can't shake the,
Yeah.
um, kind of transform your fitness. But it's just mind-boggling that the SSRIs are the first things that
Yeah.
doctors want to go to for both men
Yep.
and women when it's
Yeah.
hormone related. It should switch the other way. Maybe it's the
Yeah. Let's
pharma
go.
industry that that's the big promotion, but yeah.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
should be the other way. Let's treat
Yeah,
and prevent
correct.
before we just start
Yeah.
covering up.
Yeah, it's a
Correct.
whole just lack of education in traditional medicine. And it's not their fault. It's just that they're lacking that education. And it's also very driven by what insurance will cover. That's something very
It's
difficult
true.
for men to get treated for low testosterone. They're very, very strict limitations with what insurance will pay for low testosterone for men. So they're kind of stuck in the same boat we are, with not getting proper care and coverage for hormones. So I think that's why, a lot of mainstream providers are just stuck in this box because their hands are tied by what insurance dictates as well. Right. So I know that's a whole
Yeah.
conversation and, for another time, but we do have to think about that too and how that's really affecting just care for men, as well as women.
As well as
That's a
women.
really good point. If the like with women losing the hormones, how it impacts our bone health, our heart health.
Mhm.
Is it the same for men? That lack
Yeah.
of
And the
testosterone.
other things that are really important because there are very specific issues that men are at higher risk for when their testosterone is low. And it's as their testosterone starts to drop lower and lower, the risk factors increase
Okay.
for diseases of aging, I would say.
Okay.
But some of the less common things that we would think of is when men make testosterone, a tiny bit of it gets converted to estrogen in their body. So men do need a certain amount of estrogen for the same things that we need for brain health, for bone health, for cardiovascular health. So if their testosterone drops to a certain number, that means their ability to produce enough estrogen also drops. So they actually are at risk for osteoporosis as well. So osteoporosis, they also have an issue with increased visceral fat, like we mentioned, that pot belly they get, that's an increase in visceral fat. That's the unhealthy inflammatory type of fat that surrounds the organs. That increases insulin resistance, right? So I know that's a big, like, very popular term these days. What that means is that insulin's not doing its job of pushing glucose into the cell so that the cells don't function as well. So that whole metabolic picture of how glucose and insulin and doesn't work as well. So insulin resistance can be common, but I think it reduces their muscle mass. That's one of the biggest things because muscle is really important as we age, right? So it just increases their frailty overall. The same as women, right? So you see these, skinny little old men with no muscle anymore. They're at risk for falls, they're at risk for broken bones, the same things that women have. But I would say probably the biggest impact of low testosterone is increase in cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular risk. So testosterone is what keeps the vessels soft and pliable and also decreases blood pressure, all of those kind of things. So they're at much higher risk for stiffening of the arteries, or you probably have heard of hardening of the arteries kind of thing. But that increases their heart attack risk, stroke risk, increased blood pressure risk. Something else too that there's a whole lot of research out there is the connection between Alzheimer's and dementia and low testosterone for
That's
men
interesting.
specifically.
That's
Yeah.
very
So
interesting.
that has been studied then. That's
Hmm.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. What are some hormonal and non-hormonal treatments for men?
I'm glad you asked this because at Balanced Health, this is a whole body approach for us, right? We're not a testosterone mill, right? So we're not just cranking guys in here, getting them on some testosterone. Everybody gets the same plan and they walk out the door, right? Sometimes it's very appropriate and it is the right treatment for them, but it is something that we have to do very specifically and we have to monitor them very carefully. So it the treatment depends on what their symptoms are and then also what their lab work is telling us. So like you mentioned, that's why we do that comprehensive set of labs where we're looking at how all of the hormones are interacting in the body. So yes, there's testosterone, but the thyroid makes hormone, the adrenal glands make hormone, the adrenal glands make cortisol and DHEA, which are both very important precursors for testosterone. So, men need those as well. We need to look at the pancreas and how it makes insulin. That's another hormone. So, all of these hormones are depending on each other. So, that's why we want to look at how everything is functioning together, not just what the, testosterone levels are telling us. Sometimes men are struggling with sleep apnea, and that's what is affecting their issue. Sometimes they're struggling with adrenal fatigue, where they burned out their adrenal glands for the amount of stresses that they're under, and now they can't produce enough hormone of any kind anymore. So it is not just the testosterone, but it is more of this whole body approach where we want to look at all of those things together. Their micronutrients, something as simple as what is their vitamin D? How are their B vitamins? All of that is important for how hormones function in the body overall. So that's an important thing to look at. So some of the other, I would say, non-hormonal treatments may be looking at getting their metabolism, situated. Like maybe we need to really look at reducing alcohol, reducing processed foods, reducing sugar, getting some of that, weight off by optimizing their nutrition, sometimes correcting those nutritional deficiencies with really good high quality supplements, reversing that insulin resistance, getting them treated for sleep apnea. Sometimes those things can make all the difference in the world and allows their body to be able to create testosterone again. Right.
That's
So
fascinating.
there's more to it than just, here's my testosterone number. What what kind of TRT do I need?
That's very interesting.
With men, it's like, look at the big picture, treat the other things, and then maybe treat the testosterone. Where with women,
Yeah.
it seems like all of our things and issues with getting older relate to the estrogen. So increasing the estrogen helps us fix all the problems. Where with men, they can fix some of the problems without the added hormone.
Yeah, it is quite possible. And something else to consider is that the age of the man too, right? Because
Okay.
there is a definite, like, I would say, cutoff point or time in their life that they reach that we can't stimulate the body to make more testosterone because it just can't do that anymore. Right. Similar with what women go through with, losing estrogen and progesterone because the ovaries, are retiring because of menopause. So there is a definite point where there isn't any way to make more testosterone again. Like, we can't restart that engine. There's no amount of supplements or nutrition that can do that. But that is different for every man, right? So sometimes that's for men in their early 40s, sometimes it's someone that's closer to 60, right? So that's where it's such this wide range for them that I think it's always worth it to give the body a chance to see what it can do, before we go throwing in any kind of medications or replacement options.
That is really interesting.
It's funny. You're saying retirement. I'm like, so my ovaries, all of our ovaries, we should have like a retirement party for our ovaries.
That's
Like, it
Good
right.
should be like,
idea.
woo,
Yes.
party for the ovaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because it can vary. I know for women, the
Yeah.
the length of your perimenopause when it starts, but it's probably
Yeah.
it. But it sounds like it's a lot different because it's such a quick.
Yeah.
It
We're
just
quick.
happens so
Yeah.
fast, and the loss. And I know
Yeah.
that you've mentioned, we know from women the hormones that we're losing, and you've mentioned some that men, other than testosterone, you mentioned insulin and their adrenal glands. Do those hormones also decrease with age? Are they just really testosterone dependent?
They all decrease with age, right?
Okay.
So, we're always fighting the aging process, more or less. But any of the glands that make hormones, so all hormones are made by specific glands in the body. They all will go through this just aging process that creates a decline. Now, something, and I know we've talked about this before specifically, but if you think about it in terms of even as recent as, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, men and women didn't live as long as we live now. So, women are living a whole nother lifetime past menopause, and men are too, that we were never meant to live that long without hormones, right? So that's where I think we're seeing a lot of unique and different um, aging, diseases of aging that are happening that, we're just trying to keep up with, right? All of these changes. And yes, we want to live longer, but our quality of life, we want to live healthy and have health span, not just lifespan, if that makes sense, right? So
Yes.
that's that quality of life as we continue to age. So some of the other hormones that we check specifically. So, yes, testosterone, of course, is kind of like our headliner, but I do want to see how much estrogen men are making. I want to see if they making enough. I want to make sure that they're protected for their cardiovascular, their brains, their bone, all of that. So if their testosterone's too low, I know their estrogen's gonna be too low. Those adrenal hormones that I mentioned, DHEA, pregnenolone, and cortisol, that is evaluating how their body is keeping up with stress. Something that's very specific that goes along with that anxiety and brain fog is low DHEA in men. So that's one that, we always look at and work to optimize, if that's low. Thyroid hormones for sure. Men don't have nearly as much hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroid as women do, but once in a while they do. So it's definitely worth checking. Looking at their insulin levels to see if they're insulin resistant. That creates a lot of inflammation in the body, and that can really block the production of testosterone when that's present. And then another one that is always good to look at for men is something called IGF, and it's an indirect measurement of growth hormone. And I know that peptides are all the rage now, right? But growth hormone is something that also decreases as men age, and that just kind of compounds how they're feeling. But it leaves them the inability to really repair and recover quickly.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
I'm
Yeah.
learning a lot right
Yes,
now.
I
I
know.
really am.
Mhm.
You're doing
It's
great,
fascinating.
Susan. You're
Yes.
giving us so much good information. So what do you think about research for men and for women? Where do you think it's going? What's going to happen in the future?
I'm hoping that it gets better. I'm hoping that we'll see it in our lifetime. I think we made huge leaps by removing the black box warning off of estrogen products, right? But we haven't removed it off of men's testosterone. That's still there. So to me, that's kind of the next thing that we have to think about. Also, you know, testosterone is considered to be a controlled substance in every state. So that can really prevent providers being willing to prescribe it. And I that kind of comes from a lot of underground and anabolic testosterone use. Anything that is a controlled substance is something that is has the potential for misuse or addiction. But when we're working with bioidentical testosterone and not a synthetic, anabolic steroid, that's a whole different ball game. So it is a little bit misleading and mislabeled. Some of the black box warnings that are out there, and this controlled substance thing is really holding up a lot of research, I think. So I'm hoping the next thing to see is some of those black box warnings come off of testosterone for men, because I think it will make a big difference with how frequently they are treated, and improve their outcomes, as well. I think overall, just the future of research, I would say, is
Okay.
we're getting closer to personalized medicine, right? Where the days of cookie cutter medicine, where we're just everybody gets the same thing, that's just not the way to approach this anymore. Individualizing care is really, I think, the direction for the future.
And hopefully, I know when we talked about research that there's going to actually more research since there's none with
Yeah,
testosterone for
right.
women. Because right now it's
Yes.
still considered
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
label and it's not FDA approved,
Yep.
which is absolutely ridiculous. I know other countries have done
Yep.
it, but not the US. So
Yeah.
hopefully that will be the trend because
Yeah.
that's was my next question. Do you think that this research will continue to be unbalanced and more for men in midlife than it would be for women?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. I mean, that's just been our historically, men have always been more researched than women. And I women's research is based on men. We've been treated like little men. Like all of our research has been based on, well, what happened with the men's study? How can we, extrapolate that and apply this to women's health? So we're still so far behind in actually researching and treating women separately from men. So it that's what I would love to see happen. I just think we're kind of in this situation where the general public is going to start to dictate that. You can see this like uprising of people just being so dissatisfied, with traditional care, that they're gonna like call for it, right? At some point, the scale is going to tip, and it's going to be people are just demanding better care and more research.
We were talking before about there was only so 95% is elsewhere for
Yeah,
men,
go on. Yeah.
only 5%
Of
for
research
women.
goes.
So, you touched on it briefly, Susan, but can you tell us your thoughts on peptides and which ones you see as most effective?
Yeah, so peptides are all the rage these days, right? And it's kind of like a little bit like wild, wild west out there, because people are getting peptides from so many different places. There's a lot of gray market peptide use, and a lot of, hey, get it from your gym buddy sort of thing. Um, Peptides are a really exciting area of medicine, but they're also very misunderstood. So, some of them have really good early research for tissue repair, body composition, metabolic health, and just healthy aging. I think that's what the draw is for people, is that, this pursuit of healthy aging, and peptides are are a really big part of that. Um, what I caution patients are is viewing them as a shortcut. They work best in an already healthy foundation. So in a body that's already optimal, already healthy, their hormones are optimized, you're sleeping well, you're exercising, you're paying attention to your nutrition, you're managing your stress. All of that is your foundation. And peptides are kind of the cherry on top. So a lot of people are reaching for these peptides as kind of this magic bullet when, really it has to be done in a way that really supports the body, or they won't work. They putting a peptide into a healthy body, you will not get the outcome as putting it into a well optimized body. So I think, like, it depends on what the goal is as far as what the best peptide would be. Some people need more help with recovery. Some people need more help with metabolism. Some need more help with longevity and body composition. And so all of those require a little bit different approach and a different peptide. There are hundreds and hundreds of peptides out there. That landscape is changing. The FDA is starting to approve some of these. I think the most important thing to know about working with peptides is that it comes from an actual pharmacy is super important, right? Not from just ordering it online somewhere. That you're working with a provider that has prescribed them before and that you're being monitored. They still do require, some monitoring. So that's the thing that I think scares me the most about the current landscape of peptides and people like DIYing their peptides out there because of what they read on Reddit, right? We have to treat it with respect, right? I think that that's the most important piece.
That's really
Yeah.
good. Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what else, Susan, would you like our listeners to know about andropause?
I think that when when you're starting to have symptoms, your body is really, really good at giving you signals when something is out of balance or when something is wrong. So the things that most men experience, the fatigue, the brain fog, the weight gain, that loss of motivation and anxiety, um, insomnia, poor sleep, decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, those are all symptoms of something. It's not a personality change. It's not just the aging process. These are all things that your body is telling you that something is wrong, and don't assume it's just aging, right? Have somebody, like, if you're just not feeling like yourself again, find somebody to talk to about it. And if you don't get the answer that you want with the first person, go on to the next person, right? And do some research, talk to your friends. We just have to start the conversation the same way that we did with women, starting that conversation. I mean, we've been preaching about this for years and years, but now the conversation is finally gaining momentum. It's going to have to happen, I think, a very similar way for men. But I think their wives, their girlfriends, their partners are really instrumental in helping them get to care. I think that that's an important thing. So, the goal isn't simply about just living longer, right? It's really about having the energy and the mental clarity and just that vitality to enjoy the life that you're working so hard to build, right? I mean, think of how hard some men work to build the life that they want, and then they can't enjoy it because all of this is kind of going on in the background, and they're very good with compartmentalizing how they feel and just pushing forward. So I think it's an awareness thing, is that we want to kind of bring to the surface for men and for men's health.
Well, hopefully we're doing that here today.
Yeah.
Yes.
That we're creating
Yeah.
this episode and that women can listen to it and then have their men listen to it. Get it
Yes.
going. Right,
Hmm.
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Definitely.
wow,
Yeah.
Susan, another great episode with you. You are always fascinating to have. You go into such depth with all of the hormone education that I am usually sitting here like I'm going to have to listen. I'm going to edit and then I'm going to have to listen to it again.
Yes.
episode 7, the hormone and menopause episode, is still our number 1 most downloaded episode.
Yes. Oh,
So
that's
hopefully this one
awesome.
will,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
hopefully this one will still compete with it. But thank you so much. We are truly very grateful for your time and your
Yeah.
expertise. Thank you to our listeners and our affiliates, underalpha.com and Hello Nancy. And lastly, Susan, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. So we are located in Hamilton, New Jersey. Our address is 897 12th Street. So we're really right off of the Atlantic City Expressway. We are in a bigger location. So we actually have grown into more of a full scope wellness center, as just the place on the corner where you get your hormones sort of thing. So we've got lots going on over here.
It's a beautiful facility. It really
Thank
is.
you. Yeah. Thank you
How
very
about
much.
how about on your socials? Where can people find you on the socials?
On Facebook and Instagram, we're Balanced Health NJ. So Balanced Health NJ for New Jersey. And our website is balancedhealthnj.com.
Terrific. Thank you
Oh,
very
thank
much.
you. Thank you, Susan. It was just wonderful. And you explain it in such a way that you can just really absorb it and understand that it's not completely over my head.
Right. Yeah.
So thank
Good.
you.
Good.
And
Yeah,
for
you're
our
welcome.
listeners, please continue to download, like, follow, and share. You're definitely going to want to share this episode and download it to re-listen and just to keep learning like we can. And look for us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and continue to like and share those as well.
Terrific. Thank you. And until next week, where we continue to seek answers for women's healthcare.
And support one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
You're
You can stay,
welcome.
Susan.
Bye, girls.